Right now, there's a dog lying on a couch somewhere, staring at the wall, and if you asked its owner what it's thinking about, they'd probably say nothing, or food, or squirrels.
But what if that's wrong? What if behind those eyes there's something looking back? What if that dog knows on some level that it exists? Or, and this is the question that should actually keep you up at night, what if it doesn't? What if you are the only kind of thing in the entire universe that knows it's alive? The gold standard test for self-awareness in animals is the mirror test. While it's unconscious, you put a small mark somewhere on its body.
A dot of paint on its forehead, a sticker on its ear, somewhere it can only see in a mirror, not by looking down. Then you put it in front of a mirror and watch what happens.
Most animals see their reflection and think it's another animal. They posture, they bark, they try to scare it off. Eventually, they get bored and walk away, never once understanding that the thing they were threatening was themselves.
But a handful of animals do something different. They see the mark, they look at the mirror, they look back at themselves.
And they reach up and touch the mark on their own body. They understand that the reflection is them.
The animals that pass: chimpanzees, bonobos, orangutans, gorillas, but only occasionally.
Dolphins, orca whales, elephants, and one bird, the Eurasian magpie.
A crow-sized creature with a brain the size of your thumb that apparently knows what it looks like. The animals that fail? Dogs, cats, almost every other mammal on Earth.
Including, for the first 2 years of their lives, human babies. Now here's where it gets complicated.
Because a lot of scientists think the mirror test is a terrible way to measure self-awareness. Dogs, for example, live in a world built almost entirely on smell, not sight. Asking a dog to recognize itself in a mirror might be like asking you to identify yourself from a recording of your own heartbeat. The format of the test is wrong, not the dog.
Clean test rates. In 2017, a researcher modified the test. Instead of a mirror, she gave dogs a scent version, their own scent,
and watched which one they spent the most time investigating. Dogs spent significantly more time with the altered version of their own scent. They noticed something about themselves had changed. By their own rules, in their own sensory world, dogs may know exactly who they are.
But knowing who you are is different from knowing that you are. There's a distinction philosophers have been arguing about for centuries.
It's the difference between being a self and knowing you're a self. Between having experiences and knowing you have experiences. There's a word for this: metacognition. Thinking about your own thinking. Being aware of your own awareness. It's what you're doing right now, actually. You're not just reading these words, you know that you're reading these words.
You can zoom out from yourself and observe yourself from the outside. That's the question. Can animals do that?
And the answer, increasingly, is yes. But it's messier than anyone expected. In 2007, researchers at the University of Georgia ran they gave the monkeys a memory test, and after each question gave them a choice. Take a hard test worth more points, or take an easy test worth fewer. The monkeys consistently chose easier questions when they were uncertain of the answer, harder questions when they felt confident.
And it doesn't stop at monkeys. Rats have been shown to opt out of tests they haven't studied for, choosing a smaller,
Pigeons can report their own memory failures. Dolphins have been observed hesitating before answering, in a way that mirrors human uncertainty.
They know when they know something, they know when they don't. But here's what science still can't crack. They know when they know something, they know when they don't. But here's what science still can't crack.
There's a concept philosophers call qualia, the raw, subjective texture of experience, the specific redness of red. Is there something it feels like to be a dog? Or is the dog just running biological software, processing inputs, producing outputs, with nobody home? A philosopher made this famous in a 1974 paper with one of the greatest titles in academic history: What is it like to be a bat? His argument was simple and powerful. Bats navigate by echolocation. They experience the world as a landscape of sound reflections that we literally cannot imagine. And no matter how much we study bat brains and bat behavior, we will never know what it feels like to be one. The inner experience is inaccessible.
Angels. And if we can't know what it's like to be a bat, how do we know there's anything it's like to be anything other than us?
Consortium. In 2012. In 2012, a group of neuroscientists gathered at Cambridge University and signed what became known as the
Birds and mammals, and possibly other creatures, possess the same substrates for conscious states. The lights, they argued, are probably on. One of the world's leading primatologists spent decades watching chimpanzees and argued that the question of whether animals have inner lives was almost backwards. We should be shocked, he said, if they didn't. Evolution doesn't tend to invent something from scratch. Consciousness almost certainly evolved gradually, just like legs, like eyes, like lungs, which means it probably exists on a spectrum. And we are not at one end of it and everything else at the other.
We're all somewhere along the same line. And then there's the one piece of evidence that's hardest to explain away.
Grief. In 2018, a killer whale named Tahlequah lost her calf. The baby died shortly after birth. And for 17 days, a mother orca carried her lifeless calf on her head as she swam. 17 days. The rest of her pod took turns helping her carry it when she got tired. Scientists called it a tour of grief, and no one had a clean behavioral explanation for it. It wasn't about survival, it wasn't about feeding. There was no evolutionary advantage to carrying her lifeless offspring for over 2 weeks across open ocean, except that maybe she knew her calf was gone and couldn't let go. If that's not the behavior of a creature that knows something existed and now doesn't, what is? So where does that leave us?
The science says, yes, some animals can recognize themselves. Yes, they can think about their own thinking.
Yes, they feel something, probably. But the innermost question, the one you actually want answered.
That one we still can't fully reach. Here's what we do know. The more closely we look at animals, the more the gap narrows.
Every decade of research closes the distance a little more. Abilities we once thought were uniquely human, languish, toolers. Every decade of research closes the distance a little more. Abilities we once thought were uniquely human, languish, which raises an uncomfortable question. If we've been wrong this whole time, if animals do exist in some meaningful sense, if there's something it's like to be them,
Don't you worry about us, old boy. Sometimes you just have to be sad with your friends for a little while.
There's a chimpanzee named Washoe who, in 1966, became the first non-human animal to learn American Sign Language.
One day, a researcher who had been gone for a long time came back to visit. Washoe hadn't seen her in months.
when Washoe saw her, she signed, "Cry." Then she pointed at the researcher's eyes. "Cry." She wanted to know why the researcher wasn't crying, why she wasn't as moved as Washoe was. Whether or not Washoe understood her own existence, she understood yours. Maybe that's where it starts.